why don't we kick off with the slides, and I'm going to sort of put up our slides that we've got. Okay, let's hope that I can bring these up. If not, then that's going to be more of a challenge.
It's LinkedIn Live. I don't know. Whoever's listening, let us know how many are there, because I did my last LinkedIn Live. I couldn't see how many people were live.
Yes, well,
which is quite limiting when you come from StreamYard, and I believe there's a slight delay as well in terms of comments. So interesting enough, StreamYard tells me I can't even comment on. So like
yes. So
yeah,
like me. So I'm trying to get these slides up, and I'm hitting present button. I'm hitting. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Lovely. Thank you. If that was the lovely Kenna in the background making that happen, then thank you, Kenna. So this is what we said we'd talk about, and what does mastering prioritization mean to you, Volker?
Ooh, the good question to start, right? So what is prioritization? I mean, we had a chat about that, right? And
yes.
Chatted yesterday. And the first thing that came to my mind, I said, when we talk about prioritization, there's nothing better than the good old Eisenhower metrics, right?
Yes.
I know you have a slide on. There we go. And if I say in non-perfect conditions, which I think we find ourselves in most of the time when we work, and you just mentioned going from big corporates where, say, money is often no objective, resources are no objective. Although obviously they look after what but if I say they would have a budget to try new things out, and you're then moving to an SME. Hi Tanya. You're moving to an SME environment where resources are scarce, right? They don't have just, if I say, 100 grand to just try something new. And what you need to do is very simple. You need to prioritize, right? And when I think of prioritization, as I say, there it is. You have it up on screen. It's the Eisenhower metrics. Do you want to talk about it? You want me to talk about it?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's add to what you've said. I'll just go back to the slide I had up just now. At the end of the day, for me, we have a priority because we can't do everything.
Yeah.
And if we can't do everything, then we can do something. If we can do something, what something are we going to do, and why are we going to do it first rather than last or in the middle? And the big challenge, and that's why the Eisenhower matrix, and we'll go to talk about another embellishment to that matrix later on. But the whole point about prioritization is it recognizes you have a maximum capacity. Now, that may be over a period of weeks, months, years, but you can't do more than you're capable of doing. I always like getting out this concept of the simple concept of glasses of water, and I've actually used this on board tables. So if you have a capacity, so the 3 glasses are empty, you decide you start to fill them up, and then you get up, on the right hand side, you have full glasses of water. But if someone suddenly comes into the company and says, we need to do this, well, the question is, if you just add it to a glass, it just floods the table. I.e., you can't just add stuff. You need to take something out. You need to deprioritize something. And a lot of the work I think we do together when you're coaching people or whether you're working with teams is to say to them, you can have change, you can adapt, you can adopt different things, you can adjust, and you can improve things. But what you can't do is do it at no cost to other things that you were doing.
Yeah.
And this sort of concept of context changing has a price. Context change. I was lost for a moment, I think there. Okay. But when all those things come together, what it says about prioritization is you need to understand what your capacity is. You need to understand what is the most valuable thing you can do, and you need to understand some of the things that have a value that's not just monetary, but they're enablers of future work. So again, the great thing that we see, I suppose, privileged, is that we go into situations where people are deprioritizing really key efforts, key bits of work, and it's just putting off the inevitable question of, can we do this? Can we establish ourselves here? And so yes, and it comes on to the Eisenhower matrix, which you talked about. But fundamentally, it's no good doing all these things if you don't understand for me, if you don't understand what your capacity to do things is, because you'll end up saying, we'll do everything when everything isn't possible.
I love the analogy with the the glasses, because if you, I don't know who it was, actually a fellow coach of mine was, he said so nicely. He says, when you prioritize, because I ran a workshop for GE on that a couple of years ago, and he says sometimes when, particular, if we talked about different priorities in companies, right? If people leave the company and there's more work for for fewer individuals, your workload just increases and increases, right? So you either have to work longer hours or you have to deprioritize. And what a lot of people do, they just take on more and more work because they can't say no, right? And I'm sure you've experienced that, coaching people, where people can say, I can't say no, right? I mean, it's my boss asking. And one of my most favorite answers is like, just take it on and say, yes, I can do that. I can do this extra task, no problem at all. Which other task do you want me to deprioritize? Because I only have one limit, one capacity.
Yes.
So, and that's always a question that should then get the if I say the emotional intelligent manager to think, I see what you're doing here, right? I can't give you more and more work because you already have capacity. Because then otherwise, the glass just, fills up to the brim or overflows. And then
Yes.
we're talking stress, we're talking burnout, we're talking, So it's a great analogy, actually.
Well, thank you. And I think we'll come on to talk about, time boxing, and you talk about time blocking as well.
Yeah.
And I think these are critical if you're going to have a business that revisits its priorities as well. And that is, I remember talking to somebody who was many years ago now, who was working on NHS Spine. Now, NHS Spine was an original IT program for the NHS that was driven out of Leeds. And that's where the NHS IT was central. I think it still is centralized. And they said they had a book that was originally written by BT, and they joked not when they said it was 40 centimeters thick. And they were using this document that had been written in the early 90s, in the late 90s, when everything had changed. And they were still, and any change of control required more budget and more committees. And I think that the other thing that we need to bring into prioritization, and why it's so important, and mastering it, is it's not a solid concrete exercise. It has a level of fluidity that will change between companies, between situations, between organizations. So what was a key priority for you may drop down that order, and something that is in what we might refer to as a backlog or in a should or a could do may be reprioritized and moved up. And when you do that, we should really also, I don't know whether you're familiar with the term, when you stop doing something, when you context switch, you have what we call perish. It becomes a perishable good in the priority list. So if you've started working, let's supposing we'd started working on a small software product, an embellishment to an existing website or whatever, and we decide to shelf it to do something else. What happens to the knowledge, the current knowledge of what someone's working on, is that it stops working. It doesn't. And when you say to the person, "Can you pick that up and get it finished next month, next quarter?" they have to relearn. They have to go back and get into the code and understand where they got to. And this concept of when you context switch and you stop things is a really important process when you think about the reprioritization of things and also getting things done. And quite often that is missed out or thought about.
Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, not too dissimilar, right, from what you just said. When we look at time management as well, and multitasking, you switching from one job to another, right?
Yes.
You stop doing what you're doing, right? You're going somewhere else, so your brain takes, I think, 15 minutes to get into the flow. Once you're in the flow, you switch again. You need another 15 minutes. So not too dissimilar if we look at it from a more granular level. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So you jumped to time blocking straight away.
I thought you might want to go there, but I'm happy to go somewhere else.
No. See, I like to just make one more comment on the
Sure.
Eisenhower matrix, and the reason being because it just popped into my head. I've notoriously been really bad in terms of deleting tasks, right, or deleting to-dos or deleting emails, right? Because what if I need them again, right? What if it becomes important again, or what if someone tells me, oh, you haven't done that yet? And it's quite interesting because in the Eisenhower matrix, you have this quadrant of delete, and I love nothing more than putting an out of office on. If I say, luckily, because I work for myself, I read all my emails and I read them on holidays, unfortunately, as well. So I only go on holidays when everyone else is off as well. But if you're working for a company, right, and you take holidays for 2 weeks, and you're someone who gets a lot of emails, right? So I don't know, some people get like 200-300 emails a day, right? And I couldn't cope with 100, to be honest. Anyway, they put the out of office on and say, thanks for your email. I return on whatever date, and I will delete all my emails of the last 2 weeks. If it was important, please resend your email after that date. And I think if you're confident enough to do that, and I'd say most likely these people are not working in sales, right? Do it, because I think, however many emails you get, there's nothing that can't wait 2 weeks. And the good thing is we have with technology now, I can schedule my email, right? So if I got an out of office like that, I reschedule it for the day after the person is back and say, as of your request, here's the email. But sometimes what we need to do, and I know, I'm jumping around, and I know we talk about getting things done potentially as well with David Allen, which is a great concept. And he says, if you do a brain drain with a busy executive, and I've done that as well, where you can just write everything down that you've done, and all these tasks you're trying to keep in your head, your random access memory, as I like to call it, right? The working brain. Once you write it all down, you have all these tasks. You have to do exactly what's on the Eisenhower matrix, and go like, these are tasks I need to do. These are tasks I can do later, and David Allen has this great maybe someday list, right? I want to learn golf, how to play golf. For me, that's a someday maybe list. Maybe when I retire, I pick up golf because I can't even hit a ball. It's not my focus now. But then there are a lot of tasks you have to delegate. You say, okay, you're doing this, or just delete it because it's actually in the greater scale of things. It's not important.
We touch on the other thing about prioritization. It needs to be a habit that's instilled by, so the thing you talked about, the out of office and getting rid of emails, that's a habit, that's a permission, that's a cultural change that comes from the top of the organization. And prioritization is something that comes from the top of the organization. So if the leadership, and specifically the CEO, isn't seen that she is reprioritizing on a regular basis, and that when they reprioritize, it's a very open and discoverable project and thinking process, then it's very difficult to instill that as a learning process within an organization. And we find the best way of reprioritizing is when there is an active program, a program where people are actually engaged from the CEO through the organization on a known period of time. So they might prioritize every half year, reprioritize every quarter. And you often talk about people rebudgeting or doing forecasts or whatever. And this is all about, have you prioritized? Have you reprioritized?
Yeah.
And so just as we look at this, I wanted to sort of just touch on what does reprioritization mean. And I use we talk about the term minimal viable product that most people have heard about now. But at the end of the day, this pulls together all those issues that we've been talking about, which is, why is it a priority? Is it contributing to something that we must get done? If it's contributing to something we must get done, it's not always just the financial value of what we must do. It's the long-term sustainability of the company, the organization. What type of impact does it have? And how much effort does it need? And that's where we've inputted into the Eisenhower matrix and come up with our own heightened product. But at the end of the day, what you need to do as you go through organization is to ensure that you're always doing what you must get done, because the should and the coulds is where you have the flexibility, where your ability to adjust what you're delivering in that period sits. And particularly in, well, if we said we could do it, we now can't, because we should do this, because that's come up as a priority. And that allows you to maximize that. And the container for Moscow, must, should, could, won't do this time. And you come on and you talk about ABCD later, it's just very simple. What is it that the organization feels is an appropriate period of time? And the great thing about this is that as you go through the organization, they can adjust their own time box. So at exec level, it may be quarterly, at divisional level, it may be monthly, and at team level, it may be weekly. But it doesn't matter. There's no dictation from the top about how you prioritize. It just says, do you have one? Is it delivering the most value? And does it make logical sense when we look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I came across Moscow before. No, and if I say, never heard the term Moscow before, if you believe it or not. So, as you just said, I think it's on the next slide or a couple of slides down, right? When I Googled, just in preparation of today, when I Googled, prioritization models, I got this ABCDE model, and I was like, what is that? I thought, like, this sounds great, right?
Yeah.
But it is a Moscow model. It's a very common model, right? And it's if you look at it, it's not too dissimilar to the Eisenhower matrix, right? With the Eisenhower matrix, probably more from a leadership perspective, and says, okay, what can I, delegate? What is nice to, what do I have to do, and what can I eliminate? So it's not, too dissimilar. And I'm trying to remember who it was, or who it was first, but it was probably one of my earlier managers, when who said, you have to prioritize your tasks, ABC tasks, right? A are important, B are less important, C are least important. And to this day, I'm a big fan of to-do lists, and I have a prioritization in there. You have no bar, 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bars, or star. And it's very, very similar, right? Which tasks do you do first? Which are more important? And it's getting into the habit of actually doing it as well. As you say, right? Which tasks are important? Which ones should you really do? And I'm trying to think if I put it. I think I put it in the presentation as well. It's slide 10 if you want to go there. It's like, which task you have to do but you don't want to do, the eat the frog one. So I'm a big fan of, and it's actually stemming from Mark Twain, I think, originally, that quote, right? You have the thing you should do first thing in the morning, eat your frog. I never read this book, by the way, by Brian Tracy. I know of Brian Tracy.
Yes.
And I don't know if you read the book, but
No, I'm afraid it's another one I've dipped in and out of with various sections and so forth.
Yeah.
Tracy is well known.
There's so many, self-help books you can read, right? And I think I read the majority. But eat that frog. What does it mean? It means you get into your desk in the morning and you think, oh, I really have to write this report, right? this 1,500 word report needs to be in by the end of the day, and I can't be bothered doing it because it's the worst thing I can imagine doing it. So you're already building yourself up and go like, I don't really want to do it, right? You're not right frame of mind. And instead you go in and go like, actually, you know what? This is my frog. I should eat that frog. I should go in and do it first thing. And if you do it first thing, put yourself into the mindset, shut everything else down. You write this report, might take you an hour, might take you 2 hours, few cups of coffee with it, and you get that done. The rest of the day will just flow, right? Because your biggest task has been done, the biggest burden has been done, rather than leaving it to 4 or 5 o'clock and go like, oh, I have an hour to finish this report. And it's going to be rubbish. And it's that mindset. So funny enough, in this psychometric test I was referring to earlier, I was asked, do you finish tasks on time? And, when do you finish them last minute? And I'm like, I never finish them last minute. If I get an essay that, at uni and it was due 3 weeks later, I usually had it done a week, if not 10 days before. So I had time to review it, and then eventually I just submitted it. But that's how my mind works, right? I just like to get things done very quickly and then have time to refine it rather than doing it last minute and just doing a mini-core job.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I think when you so you're talking about individual personal prioritization. I think what often comes across in prioritization for me when we're talking about mastering it is, are you making the processes that you follow and the values that you use and the metrics that you take to measure your prioritization, is that visible both to the team? Is it visible to the organization? And is it regularly practiced? And have you come up with a methodology? And eat the frog, you can apply to the whole team, you can apply it to a division, you can apply it to the whole business. And we did some work with a client at the beginning of this year, and they clearly had a frog that they needed to eat, and no one was really putting the frog on the table, and they were just delaying it. So that was an interesting discussion that we were able to bring up. But the prioritization piece and how it fits in is, I always find fascinating, is what are you actually making? We haven't talked about that. How are you communicating around your prioritization? How are you making the rules of prioritization visible? And are they accessible to everybody? Because if you're not doing that, and we go back to our Eisenhower metrics, no one knows this. And the last thing I wanted to say on this was, we were challenged with this. We realized one day, we were working with a client, that what some people thought was important in the room and other people thought was urgent, other people thought was not urgent, and other people thought was not important, or combinations of both. So we sort of just went through and we came up with a prioritization grid where we talked about impact and effort. And impact is much easier because you can measure it, you can put values. There's lots of metrics you can put around what impact is this going to have, that are different from, if we go back, the importance of this. Importance tends to be a subjective decision. Impact is an objective, measurable decision. And again, the effort you need to put in, talking about capacity, talking about prioritization, what are you going to do first, is we want to have the highest value, most impactful actions that take the least effort. So we just define the sweet spot matrix that we have, and what we call the CWC prioritization grid. And all you have to do is just make these tools highly visible to people. This sort of, for example, we use this grid in workshops. People just write yellow label stickies, or whatever color you've got. I'm not obsessed with yellow. And they just stick them on the squares. And then you just have a workshop discussion around, well, how are we going to move these around? We've got 10 units of capability we're going to use in the next month. Which 10 are we going to do?
Yeah.
And then we can have a discussion around, well, how many units of effort do each of these make up? And so these very simple tools not only make prioritization incredibly visible, but they also force people to start thinking about what is the measurable and what is the effort required. And then who are you going to commit to making the effort? And And so that's another thing is, are you writing checks for other people to fulfill? When you prioritize, have you made sure you've communicated properly? So if you ask somebody to do something, have you asked them whether they can do it and in what time period and what resources they have? Or have you just said, do that? Well, that's abdication, not delegation, as we know. And that's probably another subject we could go into at a different date.
I really like this matrix, right? Because you not only looking at, obviously the capacity, you're also looking at the impact, right? And I think a lot of people forget that, right? What's the impact of my task? How important is is my task? How important is my, if I say my there's the impact I'm having with what I've done. So I think that's kind of like the thinking behind it. So I really like that. So to answer your question, and I know we don't, we don't want to open too many cans of worms, but you started on the time blocking.
Yes.
So how do you communicate, how important your time is to others in organizations? And I think I worked with an executive, and I was very impressed with him. He joined as a C-level in a big media agency, and media agencies are always busy, right? There's not a minute to spare, right? Everyone is just rushing around. And he says, I go to do my gym every lunchtime, 12 to 1, I'm in the gym. I said, you C-level in an agency, how do you do that? He says, I just block out my time. People respect it, and if they don't respect it, I decline the meetings, because I have the authority to decline the meetings as well. So that's another thing when we talk about delegation. And what is time blocking? Time blocking is, in my opinion, really, really simple. There's a lot of talk out there about to-do lists don't really work, or you should have a non-to-do list. And I'm like, this is just getting too complicated. I'm totally with David Allen, thinking about you need to have a trusted system where you collect all your tasks, all your things you want to have. If I say you want to have on your to-do list, and I have a to-do list. I use the same system for, I don't know, 15 years now, and it's digital, and all my tasks go in there, and then I prioritize them. But then we often, and I think that's the biggest problem for these non-to-do list people, is that we don't have the time to actually do all the tasks, right? And that's when we have to transfer them into a calendar. And I know there's some AI tools out there that do that now, and I think Google now links their calendar to their task as well, so you can move things in. So there's clever software now assisting us to do that. And for me,
I only want to say I'm conscious of time, and so perhaps we can give it another 30 seconds and then.
I mean, if someone's interested in time blocking, just go in. But I think the important bit is then make time in your calendar and say, okay, you have lunch, so no one else can book out your lunch. Go in and claim back your calendar, because other people start putting time in. Book an hour and a half and say, this is when I work on the report. And it shows other people as well in terms of what's happening in your calendar and what you prioritize as well. So coming back to how do you tell other people what your priorities are at the moment, and make it visible. I don't want to spend too much time on time blocking.
No. Let's, I think the fascinating thing about prioritization, which this conversation has illustrated beautifully for me, is that when we prioritize, it's all about what is our capacity, and we've touched on, and it shows how it touches on how we use our day, it touches on how we use our week, it touches on visibility and communication, it touches on what are the metrics we use within the business to make decisions. It touches particularly on communication. How do we communicate with those? And remember, it's a communication, not a broadcast. So the whole point is that we have backwards and forwards in that exchange. And so we have true delegation around the prioritization and understanding. So look, we've just scratched the surface. We actually run regular mastery courses in prioritization. We've just had one that went by, and we look forward to running another one in the next couple of months. Can I just say, Volker, is there anything you wish to add? And I'll just add and say thank you, everybody, for coming. And parts of this will be up and available for people to watch on our website.
Yeah, I don't think that, there's not much to add, right? I think it was a great discussion now about prioritization. We never got to getting things done, but as you say, we're doing this regularly now. So, I think every Wednesday morning. And if people want to submit a topic, right, and say, Volker, Michael, I want you to talk about getting things done, or time blocking. We can spend a whole hour on any of these topics if we wanted to. But
yes,
as you said, right, this is not the aim. So this is aimed, 30 minutes, 45 minutes max, just to give you a bit of taster and get you thinking as well, right? What can you change in your day today or your following week? Do you want to implement time blocking? Do you want to look at a new to-do list? How do you prioritize your tasks? And how do you make yourself more productive? I think that's
fantastic. And it just gives me a note to say, next week on the 26th, we have, same time, Coaching the Coaches, why supervision matters for success if you're using coaching and making sure that you have supervision. So it just leaves us to say thank you to the audience. Thank you to you, Volker. And thank you to Kenna, who runs all this behind the scenes. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.